So just want to say thank you to every single person here for the opportunity to come talk with you guys. This is a topic that I feel like we've been trying to talk specifically to this type of group for a long period of time. And up until recently, it seems with the progression of technology and the need for tech in the construction space that this is becoming a topic to talk about because there are different types of problems and things that are happening in the construction sector. So just to frame the conversation for this morning, if you were to just have a conversation about cybersecurity as a whole, we would be here pretty much all day to talk about this stuff. So what I'm going to be doing is giving just a very high level view and really focusing on three really key attacks that are happening to the small to medium-sized business market. Small to medium-sized businesses are basically 500 employees or less. That's kind of what the standard is, and that's pretty much everybody here is within that employee range. So any of the data and the conversation I'm having today, I'm specifically talking to the SMB market. Okay, I'm not talking about enterprise and all that type of stuff. And it's important to know that because there is a specific attack happening to specifically SMBs right now. And you're going to see why that is as I go through everything this morning. Just a quick, there we go. Just a quick overview of who I am and who Grit Technologies is. So my name is Matt Moline. I head up the sales and marketing for Grit. I'm the one that they send on the road and do these types of presentations, of course. So I get to be on the road quite a bit. Grit Technologies it opened its doors back in 2008, which is, as you can imagine, starting a business in 2008 was a great time to do that. So, but they survived. And basically, we are an IT company. We provide IT services for small to medium-sized businesses. So again, we're strategic in the SMB space. We partner with businesses and become their IT department, or we partner with existing IT, and our project engineers and our project team works with them to upgrade their infrastructure, install servers, update, firewalls, install, all the type of networking equipment that you need to run a business. We also have a dedicated low voltage team, so we actually can run and install like low voltage cabling. We run fiber. We also install security systems, surveillance systems, door access control. So the cool little wristbands that we got to get into our rooms this morning, we install those types of systems as well, and then manage those systems under our agreements with our clients. So we are about 34, 35 employees in total, and that's a variety from everything from our service desk team to our engineers, management, and so forth. So. And then we do have two locations. We are only located in Michigan as of right now. Our locations are in Clinton Township and also Grand Rapids. So we service pretty much all of Michigan. I think trying to remember where exactly as far as how far up the state we have somebody. I'll have to think about that. But again, most of the stuff that we do, there's a lot of remote work and stuff that we do with our clients. So we're able to manage on a pretty large scale with our folks. So for the agenda today, again, I'm talking very high level. I'm not going to go really technical, just because I don't want to lose anybody today into some of the stuff that's out there. So again, this is just some of you might have a greater knowledge of technology. So some of this stuff might be a refresher course for some of you. But again, I just want to give you guys just a 10,000-foot view of what's going on. So as far as the agenda, we're going to be looking at first just the tech adoption in construction. It's important to understand, our advancements in tech, and tech is kind of tech adoption hasn't really happened in the last, 20, but in the last 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, there's been a lot of push for technology in construction. We're going to look into that, and then we're going to look at the issue with the tech adoption the types of issues with that tech adoption that's happening. So then we're going to look and see how cyber criminals are actually getting around the traditional IT systems. And when I say traditional IT systems, I'm talking about a lot of the systems and stuff we had in place pre-2020. And then with obviously all of us having to go to remote work and having to access our systems and stuff remotely, there's been a lot of loopholes and gaps and things like that. We're going to look and see how people are getting around those systems. We actually are going to take a quick little field trip into the dark web. If you guys aren't familiar with the dark web, basically that is the black market, the cyber underground world of where bad actors and hackers, trade information. They buy and steal, or they purchase and sell services to do their, nefarious activities. So we'll take a quick look at that, and it's important to understand how these attackers work, so you know how to understand how to protect yourself. So that's why we're going to take a tour and look at that today as well. At the end of this, you guys are going to have a better understanding about the terminology and how to be what we call cyber resiliency. It's also traditionally known as layered defense, and creating basically these roadblocks for your business. So cyber attackers have a really hard time in getting your personal data and information, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then I'm going to leave you guys with some homework. I know we all love homework, but I'm going to have you guys check out what's called the Nist Cybersecurity Framework. I'm going to give you guys an understanding about that, and essentially that's a very detailed roadmap about how to protect your business from these types of attacks. So let's go ahead and start with the first one, which is tech adoption and construction. So as we all know, there's been a lot of push with technology in construction today, where we used to use pen and paper for keeping tracks of projects and working in Excel. And now we've got project management systems. We're using tablets on the job site. We're taking payments instantaneously for jobs on site. We're using technology like drones in the field now, which I never thought drones would be in construction, but we're using it for job site safety. Some of these drones have got built-in AI now to where they can actually scan buildings if they're looking to do renovations. So it gives people like 3D renderings and things like that. Again, it's all in the, it's all for making the projects more efficient, more safe, more productive, and obviously making our businesses more competitive. That's the big thing. When it comes to construction and tech, there's really two things that are going on. It's basically allowing us to do our projects faster, more efficiently, and basically more on time. So it's time and money is really what it comes down to for using tech in construction. The big thing within construction too is the collection of data, which I never thought we would see in construction before. Now we've got positions like senior data analyst for some of these big, construction companies. We have software developers that are developing their own in-house software for construction companies, all in the name of gathering all of this data that's coming from all of the different technology that we're using. You guys are probably familiar with Autodesk. They do like AutoCAD and that type of stuff. They've come out with articles, and there's a big push about using data to your competitive advantage. So taking all of this information, all of our project management, data that we have, our cost of our goods, all of that stuff, and we input that stuff into these systems, and that spills out, our project timelines, how we can achieve, better results, create less waste, be more efficient, and be, again, more competitive in the industry. So what this is doing is all great. It's excelling things forward. We're companies that have embraced technology. They've seen the competitive advantage that it's doing. However, it seems that in the wake of the push to excel our businesses forward, we've unfortunately left some gaps behind, and there hasn't been a big focus on the cyber end. So what I'm going to do, actually, let me just give you guys let me back up just a second. This is just another slide just to give you guys some examples of just some of the other tech that construction companies are using. And this is from anywhere from the SMB market to some of these larger, companies that have like, 26,000 employees, so forth and so forth. We've got things like 3D printing now. People are using drones. There's autonomous vehicles. Where you got site management software. We got electronic payment and budgeting managing systems. There's even virtual reality to where you can basically go into a building before it's even built and see exactly how it's going to look before you actually build it. All of this stuff is great, but all of it essentially has a big issue. And what this is doing for a lot of companies, if they don't have a plan in place for their technology, is it's increasing what we call the attack surface, okay? So again, what we used to have was just within our four walls. A lot of companies just had a server, they had some software and stuff to run their business. Now we have, people accessing stuff, remotely. We're creating different accounts. We're using different tech. We're using different softwares, cloud-based softwares, all of that. These are all different endpoints that can gain access to your business. And that's where having this visibility is really important, and that's the type of stuff that we're running into. So what I'm going to focus on next here is there's a lot of different types of cyber attacks going on. You've probably heard of them. You've probably heard of a brute force attack where they're actually, trying to basically hack into the server like we would see in the movies. They got their, computer and they're running the software and they're trying to do all these different variations, of a password. There's, things like attack hardware where it's like basically people can lay, like a normal looking USB stick, into a business, and that's another way to gain entry. There's DOS attacks, there's all sorts of stuff. There's like 8 or 10 like really well-known attacks. Obviously, we don't have time to go over 8 or 10 different attacks, and I think I would lose some of you guys today if I was actually going to go through that. So what we are going to do though is I'm going to look at the top 3. Okay, this is where from the FBI to IBM and their reports, this is the stuff that we keep seeing again and again and again and again. In a year to 2 years from now, we might have a new top 3. But this is as of 2022. This is what a lot of companies are having trouble with today. So let's start with the first one. Anybody ever hear of phishing before? Cool. Anybody want to give me a quick definition of it? Just curious. Yeah.
It's basically a way of, whether it's text message, email, or communication electronically, requesting your passwords, requesting credit card information, requesting personal information, basically.
Right.
Making them look like they're somebody else.
Right. Yep. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So, quick definition just from the web. Specifically spear phishing, which is targeted attacks. So this is in regards to email. There's phishing as a whole, like what he was saying. There's a lot of different types of phishing, but the biggest one right now, still today, is what's called spear phishing. Why it uses a nautical term, I have no idea. It's just what it is. But spear phishing is the fraudulent practice of sending emails from a known or trusted sender in order to induce targeted individuals to reveal confidential information. Next slide, I just have a quick simulation of kind of what that looks like. By the way, this is one of our account managers, Joanne, that got in front of the camera to do this for us. So if you happen to ever work with us, you'd be able to get to know her. So in this simulation here, again, person's working on their computer, they get an email. It looks like it's from IT support. Okay, it's not from IT support. It's from a cyber criminal. It usually has some sort of sense of urgency behind it, saying, in this particular case, like, hey, you needed to update, or we need to download this software patch. Again, software patching is going to come through an email, but in this particular case, it's saying, hey, you need to click this, you need to run this script, and we need to download this patch. And the unfortunate thing with this particular simulation is that once this is done, in this phishing attempt, or this phishing scenario, what's downloaded is a malicious form of malware called ransomware, where it will actually completely encrypt all of the files on that person's computer and then possibly the entire company's network. So that's kind of a basic, or kind of like one of the, I'll back up, but that's one of the methods that they're using to get in there. Let's look at a couple other types of phishing emails that you may encounter. This might be a little hard to see for some of you guys, so sorry about that. But this one looks like it's from Amazon.com. One thing you'll notice is that if you remember years and years ago, you might get an email which was a phishing attempt. You might have a dead relative somewhere, that you never heard about, and you inherited, $1 million or whatever. Obviously, red flag. We know that's not true, and a lot of people don't fall for that. They're getting.
It wasn't true?
It wasn't true. I'm sorry. As much as I'd love to believe it, Uncle Harold in the UK passed away and left me $1 million. But no, what's happening now is these guys are getting really, really good. The templates and stuff that they have available to themselves, they have graphic design teams, guys, to where it looks exactly like it's coming from a legitimate source. So in this particular scenario here, if you were to click on this, it's basically saying, hey, looks like there was an unauthorized attempt to log into your account. Click on this link and help us verify your account. So for the untrained eye, most people would click on the link. It would take them to a fake web page that would look exactly like the login page to Amazon.com. And I say exactly, I'm talking about exactly. Ads and everything, your top, Amazon, picks of the day and all that type of stuff. Once they log in with their credentials, usually there's an error that comes up. It just says, oops, something went wrong. And basically what happens is it then forwards that person to the actual Amazon.com login page. And they just think, oh, there was some sort of error loading the web page. None's the wiser. And now that attacker on the back end got those credentials. And they're actually notified through the sophisticated software that they're using that they got those credentials and they're able to log in. Obviously, that's an Amazon.com thing, but again, they can also use those credentials potentially to log into other sites. And I'll talk about credential stuffing in a little bit. Another example, again, this looks like it's from Microsoft's support, directly from Microsoft. This is, hey, your storage is full. You need to clear the cache. Log into your Office 365 account. Same type of thing. Looks like a fake. It goes to a fake web page. Looks exactly like the login. Works just like the login screen. They capture those credentials, and now they've got access to your email and potentially confidential information. Some key indicators to look out for. You can't see this on this, and I apologize for that. But one of the things is to look for, like, from the where it's coming from. In this particular case, if you were to actually take a close look at that, it's a little blurry, and I apologize. It's actually not from Microsoft at all. It's from some other web address. So it's important as a company to start doing what's called cybersecurity training and having your team actually start to identify these things and know what to look out for. Because the templates and the strategies that they're putting in place are, I've almost fell for them myself a couple times, and I'm in this business. So you can imagine to the untrained eye what this is doing. So there are things and indicators to look out for, obviously, like misspelled words, there's other things that you can do as well to help with this type of stuff. This is another example of phishing. This has nothing to do with stealing credentials. This has everything to do with trying to get a wire transfer going. And so in this particular case, this is them impersonating a CEO, and usually it involves a high-level employee talking to a lower tier employee, and there's usually, again, some sort of sense of urgency going on. In this particular case, it looks like they're out of town. Hey, they can't talk right now, they're not available by phone, but there's an urgent thing happening. There's an invoice that was sent, another email. Check your spam filter. Again, spam filter probably caught something that was malicious, but now this is a workaround to get that person to access that particular file and fill out this information, do this wire transfer for me, and make sure it happens today. So now some people think, well, that type of stuff, I think we have a pretty good pulse on, our team, and, I don't think we ever fall for that. I can't tell you how many people I've sat in front of that have actually had this happen. And actually a husband and wife team, there's a manufacturer that we work with that we brought on board, and that just happened to them. And it's just so happened that they were breached. The attacker knew that the husband was going to be out of town. He was actually over in Germany doing a presentation on some cool new tech and stuff that they were working on. And his wife got an email that looked like it was from him. It wasn't actually, the domain that it came from looked exactly like their email domain, but it was actually just a little bit different. There was a letter missing actually in the domain. So the attacker actually went as far as to create a fake domain, was interacting with his wife and said, hey, I can't talk right now, I'm in the middle of presentation, but I need you to wire $100,000 to this. And she did it without even thinking about it. And it wasn't until a few days later, about the time that he got back, that they realized that that happened. And obviously they did have a cyber insurance policy. They were able to get that money back, but that was over a long period of time to work through that. So phishing is still the #1 attack today, or attack method that's happening today. I'll talk about how you guys can help your employees with this a little bit later. The second one is ransomware. I kind of already alluded to this one a little bit. Anybody here heard of ransomware before? Oh yeah, cool. It's kind of making the news. There's been a lot of talk about it. We're even getting directives and messages directly from our own White House, encouraging small to medium-sized businesses to start fortifying their businesses because of this threat. And this is by far right next to spear phishing. You need kind of spear phishing along with some other type of attacks to get ransomware into a system. But this is the big one that people are losing sleep at night, and this is where businesses are actually closing their doors is because of this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you guys some real life examples of some construction companies that have went through this. And so in order to help you guys learn from it. So what ransomware is, I talked about it already, but just again, the definition of it. Ransomware is a type of malware. It's a sophisticated piece of malware that prevents or limits the users from accessing their system, either by locking the system screen or by locking the user's files until a ransom is paid. So basically, in this picture, this is kind of, hopefully this never happens to anybody here, but this isn't out of a sci-fi movie. This is a real thing. What it does is basically once it enters the system, it has the ability to basically spread through a network. So it might enter from somebody's email, and it attacks that person's computer, and then could spread through the network. It will encrypt obviously the files that are on those computers, and then it can move through the network and then attack your servers as well. And usually even encrypt even your backups that you have for your servers. The only way to get or remove ransomware is really, there's only really just a couple different ways. One is you actually pay the ransom, which can be very costly. We're not talking like a couple $100 here. We're talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for specifically to the small to medium-sized market. Believe it or not, attackers are actually really good about giving the decryptor keys to companies that pay the ransom, and the reason why is because they want this to keep reoccurring. And so they found that if they actually do give the key, and somebody pays the ransom and they do give the key through just through our world, people understand that this is a good way to get back up and running, is just pay the ransom and keep getting back up and running, because the downtime that you incur could actually be more costly. Something to know about that is that in 2020, our legislation has now made it illegal to pay ransomware. And the reason why for that is that many of these organizations and these attackers are directly tied to terrorist organizations. Now you can actually be fined on top of paying a ransom. You can be fined as well for paying a ransom and have to undergo legal fees. So definitely want to avoid that. And again, they're getting paid through like a cryptocurrency. It's not through send a check somewhere. It's they're using like Bitcoin, Monero, Dogecoin, that type of stuff to get that ransom. What they're also doing is what's called a double extortion attack. So where it used to be where it was just all about getting ransomware into somebody's computer or system, what they're doing now is they'll actually breach a business, sit there for a long period of time, and then just see how things are operating, seeing what type of security systems and things they have in place so they can deliver the most maximum impact. They want to see if there's any type of sensitive data, that type of stuff. And the goal is, again, to get money from the people that they attack. So even though they might not pay the ransom, what they'll do is, on top of just completely encrypting all of your data, now they have information. They'll have sensitive documents, they'll have employee information, that type of stuff that they will try, if you don't pay the ransom, they say they will both publicly publish that stuff, which obviously don't want to have happen. This has happened to a couple architecture firms as well. They've had some very innovative designs. They had some stuff that was stolen, and ironically enough, some of their competition about 3 to 5 years later was making some designs very similar to those plans because it was publicly posted, and obviously that firm is still having to deal with that. So enough about that. Let's move on. So let's look at actually a couple examples, and this is in the news. You guys can go Google this yourself, of a couple construction companies that made the news recently that had some cyber or ransomware attacks themselves. So this is Burr Construction. This is a Canadian company, right around 1,500 employees. So it is a good-sized organization. So December 2019, just right around that pre-COVID time, they got tagged. These guys have a lot of contracts with the Canadian Department of National Defense. They have millions and millions of dollars of contracts with this, and so they were a very prime target. They did suffer a brute force attack where they got into the organization, and then they did deploy ransomware. This was actually by a organized group of attackers called Maze. They're well known, and their method of attack is to get into a system, sit there for a long time, see what's going on, and then try to deliver the most maximum damage. In this case, they stole 60 gigabytes of data, all pertaining to the Department of National Defense, which is a big that's a big issue. We do know that the ransom that they wanted them to pay was right around $9 million. We also know, though, that they didn't pay the ransom, and the data that they did take was actually released publicly online. So they basically created their own public website that anybody could access, and now people have access to those documents. So that's one way of how these guys operate and work. So again, what they do know too is they don't know exactly all of the data that they stole. So this could potentially have some big issues down the line, especially when it involves the Department of National Defense. Another company, this is Snell Contractor. So these guys do roads and bridges. They're right around 170 employees, okay? Much smaller group of people here. September 2020, they had a cyber attack. This is where their servers and their backups were encrypted with ransomware. So that scenario that I showed you guys earlier, that where the person was just working and they got an email, this is what happened, okay? They got ransomware through a phishing attempt. What happened is all of their computers, their servers, and even the backups that backed up their servers were also encrypted with ransomware. So the only way to really recover from a ransom is either one, you pay the ransom itself, or you can restore from a backup, okay? And that's why there's been versions of ransomware now to where it will strategically attack the backup as well, especially if they're in line to the server. So now with that, you have no way to back up or restore. There's no way to actually go back in time, if you will, to before ransomware was deployed into the organization. You can restore from that backup. Now you're completely dead in the water. And that's exactly what happened to these guys. So luckily they did have a cyber insurance policy. However, the insurance policy only paid out so much. So in addition to that, they did have to pay, I think it was upwards of $800,000 in insurance and betterment fees. They had to rebuild over 200 computers. So basically all the computers were infected. Again, there's no backup that they could restore from. And so what happened is they had to go to every single computer, completely wipe them clean. If there was anything that was stored locally on those machines, it was pretty much good as gone. It went back to factory settings. And it took them about 3 months to completely rebuild the missing data. So obviously in that time when their stuff was locked down, there's downtime that's happening. You have your staff and your employees using old and antiquated processes. So it's not just the ransom and the other fees you got to pay to get things back up and running. There's a loss of profitability happening here too. So that's the second. So we talked about phishing. We talked about ransomware of the three that I'm talking about. The next one is called password loss. We're classifying it as password loss. This is kind of where a lot of the industry or a lot of the attackers are kind of using now. This is another method, and because it completely bypasses a lot of the stuff I've already talked about. So everybody here has a username and password for something. We've got our email, we've got our network login, we've got social media account, all of that stuff. Who here would freely admit that they're using the same username and password for more than 3 or 5 accounts? Okay. Thank you for being honest. Pretty much most of us here. So what we have is we have a password, we have a credential problem. And it's not just a United States thing, it's a completely global issue right now. So still today, 53% of people around the world still use the same username and password for all. Well, Matt, what's the problem with that? Why can't I use the same username and password for everything? You probably heard this from IT folks for years now. The reason why is, and I'm going to explain this shortly with this little graphic here, is a method of attack called credential stuffing, okay? So let me paint out a scenario for you so you guys can understand this a little bit better. Let's use a real life example. So everybody's familiar with LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn, the social media network, great for networking, you know, it's a business platform, okay? Well, in 2016, LinkedIn, their servers, their database was hacked. And what was stolen is millions and millions of user credentials, so usernames and passwords, okay? It was publicly known that this happened. So what an attacker does is they'll get a database, and they'll get their collection of stolen databases, so LinkedIn.com database, they got that. And then what they'll do is they'll use sophisticated software, also known as bots, that basically, there's a lot of automation built into this. It's kind of believed that, you know, attacker will get this stuff and then they'll get a username and password and then they'll try to go to these different websites and try to log in. That's too time consuming. There's sophisticated software now, and there's a lot of artificial intelligence built into this now, to where they can literally go into a computer program, take this credential list, hit enter, and it will go out into the World Wide Web and will try to basically see if there's any credential matches for any types of victim services. So what types of services am I talking about? I'm talking about your Office 365 accounts. I'm talking about your banking information. I'm talking about, you know, any type of software that you guys are using, web-based software, to see if there's any matches that are out there. So that process is what's called credential stuffing. So again, if we're using the same username and password for everything, that same username and password could be used to log into a different site. So that's the big problem that we're facing today. So in order to combat that, us wonderful IT folks, we come to our folks and we say, hey, we want you guys, and the best business practice today is to have strong, complex passwords for all of your different user accounts. That's all well and good. The problem is that most users today have over 50 different login accounts that we have to deal with. So it's not your fault that we still want to use the same username and password for everything. So right now we have what's called a password problem, okay? And attackers know this. They know that that it's a huge issue, and they know this method works really well. And so what'll happen is you know, you'll have, and again, I'll use the example of like an Office 365 account. They'd be able to get your credentials, your information. You would have no way of knowing that because it's all in the background. It's all out in the cyber world. You have nothing in place to detect that. And they could log into your email and they could sit there for a long time and just gather information, So we have a password problem that's going on. And that's the third type of attack and type of attack method. Again, there's like, yeah.
How do you feel about those passwords? Basically the ones you store them on, like I use Keeper.
Yep.
And then it preloads everything for you when you go to a website.
Yeah.
Are those good or bad?
So I'm actually going to talk about that.
Okay.
That's part of that. So I'm glad you said that. So we're going there, okay? So so the SMB market is definitely under attack, and the reason why is that enterprise level type of companies, over the years they've been able to install and they've been able to upgrade their cybersecurity posture pretty well. Attackers are having a hard time. They have to be very organized. It's an individual attacker trying to take over a big industry, like trying to attack DTE or something like that. That's not really common. It usually needs to be a group of people in order to do that. However, what's happening is the SMB market is definitely behind in this, and they know that, and they know a lot of businesses, specifically in the construction industry, don't have a lot of these safeguards in place. And so that's one of the reasons that we've seen a rise in attacks is because there's a lot of open vulnerabilities now. A lot of people know about this, and they're exploiting those vulnerabilities. Again, we talked about the rise in adoption of technology that's also happening because of this, as well as a couple other factors that are going on. So I'm going to share some data specific to the SMB market. So this is not just construction. This is all small to medium-sized businesses. Again, that's 500 employees or less. And this is from 3 very credible sources. This is the latest data that we have from 2021 from the FBI, Verizon, who does an annual cybersecurity report, and from IBM Security. What we are finding is that in the case of the FBI, because anytime there's a cyber insurance claim, it needs to be reported as part of the process to the FBI. We've seen not just a rise, we've seen a spike in phishing activity for small to medium-sized businesses. And when I say spike, I'm talking a 915% spike from 2018 to today. That's the reality that we're living with today. From Verizon, what they have found is it's not really a specific piece of software, piece of technology that's the issue. They have found that it is the human factor. It's individuals, human beings, our employees, which are our greatest assets, but they're also our greatest vulnerability. They're falling for these phishing schemes. They're not able to, we're not using things like password managers and things like that to help with our credentials. That's leading in a rise of about 261% from 2019. So again, not a 10% rise, not a 5% rise. We're talking a 261% rise in that activity. From IBM, this is really interesting. Again, this might be a little hard to see, but what they have is they have the average cost of a breach for a company today, again, to the SMB market. So the average cost, I'm not talking about the ransomware cost, I'm talking about the cost of downtime and fees and the cost to get systems and stuff restored. As of sorry, I even had a hard time reading it. As of 2020, that cost is just shy of $3 million. So if you succumb to ransomware, that's a very real reality, is that the total cost to get back up and running is somewhere around, right around just under $3 million as of today, which could be completely catastrophic for a company, and some companies don't recover from that economical issue. So interesting stat as well is the average time that somebody's actually on a network. So when an attacker is on a network, we sometimes think that, oh, somebody got on the network and now they're going in and attacking us like the same day. That's not the case at all. The average time that a breach happens or somebody's on the network is around 287 days. So that's almost a year, folks, that somebody can be on that network. They can be looking at all of your personal information. They can be looking at your files, bank statements, all that type of stuff that's there. And what they're doing is they're just formulating a plan. They're figuring out how they're going to deliver the maximum amount of damage to your organization. So to break that down a little bit more, it's about 212 days in that 287 days that that's the mean time to identify. So basically within that time frame, that 212 days is usually the time when the breach happens to when it's identified. And that's about another 75 days to contain that breach. So that's the reality that we're working with today. And obviously we want to do what we can to minimize that timeline. So who's still with me? Everybody still with me? Good, cool, thank you. So let's take a tour of the dark web, shall we? Let's get into this a little bit. Let's get into the mindset. What's that?
Buy a kidney to see if we can do it.
So again, what is the dark web? And excuse me. So what is the dark web? So again, this is the cyber underground. So the dark web can be really explained with this wonderful iceberg graphic here. The top layer that we see that's above the water is what we call the surface web. Okay, that's your normal websites that you guys view day in and day out. That's your Amazon.com, that's your shopping sites, your different news sites, all that type of stuff that you can search with Google. That's called the surface web. Okay. Below that is what we call deep web. And this is like our email, our internet, phone systems, anything that has like a password, okay? Any type of text, instant messaging, type of applications, banking, stuff like PayPal and that type of stuff. That's all in the deep web. Okay, you can't really search specifically for those types of logins. They're usually password protected, and there's usually added security behind that. Below that, which is a very small piece, is what's called the dark web. The dark web is what basically it is a small percentage of the known World Wide Web that's out there. Okay, it's actually completely encrypted. Believe it or not, a lot of the tools in the dark web and how it was created was actually developed by the United States Navy for basically communications. And the only way to access it is actually with a Tor client, and it's on its own specific network. So you can't Google search dark websites. You won't be able to find them because their own separate network, completely virtual private network, if you will. So you basically have either means through accessing what's called an onion router or accessing with a Tor client to get into the Tor network. Once you're in there, your movement, your sites that you access, your communications is completely encrypted. Okay, so this is a great way to talk about all sorts of criminal acts and nefarious activities. So I talked about accessing it. Another way you can access it is through essentially, again, a Tor client or like a search engine. So similar to like your Google. Okay, this is a tool called AMIA, and this is what you would use once you get into the dark web to start finding some of these known dark marketplaces and websites. There's a lot of websites and stuff that you can't even find with this. You specifically have to know about it through different forums and things like that to understand where these sites are. But you can actually search a lot of pretty interesting stuff. So if you can imagine you're an attacker, what are some of the things you'd probably want to get? Stolen credential database, how to deploy ransomware, that type of stuff is what these people are searching in a search engine like this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to show you some real dark web websites, and this is going to be, and I just want you guys to see how easy it is to start deploying this type of stuff. So this is an example of a dark website or a dark marketplace, and they've got everything. They've got basically a book on 5 different ways to deploy ransomware. You can get fake money. You can, there's a Western Union attack. There's like a fake Uber thing here as well. So you can actually go to these marketplaces, and I think it's hilarious too is that they even got like 5-star reviews. So the only way that these guys can gain any credibility is through customer service. So actually you get the best customer service actually with these criminals because that's all they have to go by. And then obviously word gets around that this is a very credible site to get this type of information, and that's how it works. So this is one here. It may not look like much to you right now, but if you remember what was the first attack that I talked about? Phishing, right? So this is, in this marketplace, you can actually get a phishing collection. This is all the templates that you need to do like the Amazon.com phishing attempt, the Microsoft.com phishing attempt. It helps you create those fake websites to where, did you have a question? Yeah, okay.
Maybe you're going to get to this, but how efficient are the companies like Norton and LifeLock? They claim that they search the dark web on your behalf and look for flags for your account. Are you
Yep.
going to get to that?
I'm going to get to that. Yep.
All right.
Yep. We call that dark web monitoring. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So this is an example of the type of affiliate market that's out there. So not only do you have people actually trying to attack your businesses, there's a whole nother marketplace now of criminals that are offering services. You can actually hire a hacker to go hack a business. You can, and there's a lot of that going on. And so they don't have to be directly tied to some sort of criminal activity with the business. They can actually create templates and things like that for a business and sell it. And I don't think you guys can see it, but the cost of that package is only $120. That's it. And you've got your templates for life, and now you can go, start doing your phishing campaigns for your attacks.
Now, why is it that phishing emails usually have some sort of grammar error or
usually foreign, and somebody who's not English is not their first language. Yeah. However, that being said, they're getting a lot better with that. Unfortunately, we've got people on this side of the world that are helping, and again, there's money involved, right? So I can create this list, host it for $120, and I can have hundreds, if not thousands, of people, download that template package, and I'm making money. So who cares? That's their mindset. So this is a dark leak market website. So I was talking about credentials. We talked about the LinkedIn breach, right? This is a whole marketplace specifically for credentials. One of the first ones out there is AT&T database leak. AT&T was hacked, and a lot of their credentials, over 70 million passwords, social security numbers, and data was stolen. You can buy that whole database leak, again, 70 million credentials. You can buy that just for $500. Okay, and now they have, again, the means through credential stuffing to, again, go out and see who their victims are, and then take the necessary steps to start attacks on the small to mid-sized business market. Here's another closer look at one of them. This is the Acer leak that happened not too long ago. This was back in, I think, March of 2021. Acer, you guys have probably heard of them. They got computers and monitors and things like that. So businesses obviously created accounts with Acer, probably using the same username and password, right? And they had a huge database leak that happened. I can't remember how many millions of credentials or whatever happened here. But again, you can go ahead and buy this leak right from this site using Bitcoin, crypto, any type of digital currency. You can even buy a sample. I think what's funny though is that you do have this little notice here. Due to leechers and scammers, we stopped giving free samples out there. So you've got attackers getting attackers. So that's just crazy. So that's another example of the database leaks that are happening, and this is big money. We're talking millions of dollars that is being processed every day with these types of acts. I talked about ransomware. So again, a lot of these guys will get into a company and they'll sit there for that 287 days or whatever it is. Not all ransomware, just out of its own package, is going to be like the most successful. So by hiring another bad actor or hacker, hire a hacker type of service, you can have your own custom-made ransomware to where they'll exchange knowledge about the network that they're working with, what type of antivirus they have, what type of information they'd be able to collect about that organization, so they can deliver the most maximum impact. They're running a sale on this right now, so instead of $470, you can get it for $350. So $350 plus the cost of a database leak. Where are we at? A couple grand maybe on the high end. And you can ransom a company for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you can kind of see why I want you guys to see this. This is the marketplace. This is what we're dealing with in the background, and there's not enough people really talking about it. So what we need to do as companies, let's start transitioning, and I'm going to talk about some of the points you guys brought up earlier here in just a second, is we need to start building what's called cyber resiliency in our businesses. And we need to start taking action today. How am I doing on time here? I'm doing all right. Cool. So basically, cyber resiliency, what was traditionally known as called layered defense. Basically, our goal is to create as many roadblocks or gates or doors as we possibly can for these attackers to gain access into our organization. So what are some of those look like? And so let me give you some examples of some solutions. And again, talking about those the top three type of attacks that are out there. One of the things that you can do is actually start enrolling your staff into a cybersecurity training program. Okay, this isn't an annual training or a quarterly training, which is important. You need to do that. On top of that annual or quarterly training, is you need to have a program that actually simulates phishing attempts on your staff, and that's one of the things that we do at Grit Technologies. Is we with our clients, and again, Joanne here, she's working. There was an Amazon.com phishing attempt that came in. She clicked on the link, but in this case, it's not a real attack; it's a simulation. So she clicked on the link and she got a notice saying, hey, this was a simulation. Here's what would have happened if you followed through with this. So it's a great training opportunity. It's ongoing. The types of attacks are always changing. So it's important to be part of a simulated type of cybersecurity training program, much like this. And what happens on the back end too is that leadership of a company are also notified when something like this happens. When somebody clicks on something, they get like a monthly report. They can work with those individuals to bring up their cybersecurity posture. And with us being remote and out of the office and everything, we don't really have people in the office all the time now with this whole hybrid working and all that type of stuff. This gives you that 10,000-foot view of your staff and your company. So something like this is one of the best tools that you can do and bring into your organization. Password manager. This is what you were talking about. So start with your business to start embracing a company-wide password manager. If you guys aren't familiar with a password manager, basically it's a digital vault that has the passwords for all of your different logins. Okay, so again, the issue is the password issue that we have today. So what this does is it allows us to have complex and strong passwords for all of the different accounts that we need to log into. This is a product called Dashlane. There's a bunch of other ones. This just so happens to be the one that we use for our company. And what's great about it is that when you log into a website, it's going to autofill that information in for you. Again, with that strong complexity, I mean, passwords that we would never ever come up with, all the different hash signs and all that type of stuff. They're like 16 to 32 characters long, that type of level of complexity. The great thing about this is that once it's set up and done, you don't have to think about it. The only password you need to think about is the password to access that database. Okay, so we can go back to just having one password. It makes things simple. It's no longer our job to try to remember all of these passwords. It's our job to start using password managers. That's where things are moving forward today. The cool thing about this is that at a company-wide level, you have basically an admin account for the entire company, so you can deploy these out. You can actually share passwords, which is a great tool. There's probably some of you guys here that are sharing passwords within the organization to log into different accounts. Not a good practice. We don't want to do that. What this allows you to do is, and I'll use an example of a marketing department, for example. You have like 2 or 3 individuals that need the login information for like a Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and that type of stuff. Well, with this type of program, you can actually share that password to their account, their password, their Dashlane account in this case. And when they go to that website, it autofills it for them, and they have no idea what those credentials are. So what's great about that is if that employee ever left or was terminated, quick click of the button, and they don't have access, and they never knew what those credentials were. So you don't have a vulnerability out there with a disgruntled employee. So again, another great tool.
Matt,
Yes.
how does that work amongst your different devices? So
Mm-hmm.
home when at work.
Yep.
Phone at a time.
On the computer side and also on the mobile side, it works with all of the devices. So, and it's all cloud-based. So somebody signs up with it. So like I've got my web, sites and stuff that I got to access on the go, on my phone. It works with Android, iOS. It autofills and does everything for you on the mobile side as well as on the desktop side or laptop that you guys might have, or tablet or whatever. So it's really well thought out. The great thing about it too is that it will websites, like personal websites for us and also business sites, it actually differentiates those for us. So you'll actually have a list of all of your business type of sites and also personal sites. And if somebody was ever to leave, they can actually take their personal stuff with them, and the business doesn't have to have like this account with all of these personal logins and things like that either. So they've really thought it out. So
How safe are companies like Dashlane?
they are very safe. So there are ones out there that are free or very cheap. I would highly recommend that you steer away from those, just because it's hard to trust companies like that are cheaper. There's other tools and stuff that they kind of have called nodes that are penetrating into their database that could be potential exploits as well. They use it for like marketing purposes and things like that. So two that I would highly recommend. One is Dashlane. That's the one that we use in-house for our company. It's the one we have a lot of our clients on and that we're training them on. Dashlane isn't paying me to say any of these two. It's just they got a great product. Like the other one is, shoot, why am I not thinking of this one? I'll think of it later, so I'll come back to that. So ask me that again, I'll clear my mind here, and we'll do that. So again, so you definitely should be using a password manager. I'll make sure we got enough time here. We're doing good. So the third thing, and this goes back to credentials and talking about the dark web. There are services that provide dark web monitoring, and this is something that we do for all of our clients as well. So luckily, we've got what are called white hat hackers. So there's the black hats, which are the ones that are trying to do all the criminal activity. Then there's white hats. They're hackers for good. They're on your side. They want to. So we have, we partner with a couple different vendors and resources out there to provide these types of services. To where it's continuously looking for those credentials that are associated with your organization. So where you had no visibility before, you can have visibility now. So again, it's going out into the dark web. It gives you like a list of known credentials that are out there. And if there's any new things that happen, say something was exploited and we found about it tomorrow, you're immediately notified, and then you can change your password. The cool thing about the product like Dashlane, going back to the password manager for a second, is that there is some dark web monitoring built into it as well. And they've got it so well laid out to where once you're notified, so one, I will say it's not as sophisticated as some of these other products that are out there. It's a good entry-level dark web monitoring type of service. But once you know about it, you have a feature in most of these password managers now. So it's called a one-click change password option, to where you're notified, the credential's known that it's out there, that there's a breach of some type. It'll give you all the information about a breach. You can do one click and it'll automatically update that password for you. You don't have to go back into that website and re-log in and do the whole change password scenario for most of the sites. And most websites today are very accepting in the use of password managers today. So it's making things very easy for clients. So dark web monitoring is something you definitely want to be looking into and getting for your company. Again, as we become more mobile and we keep adding technology, this is going to be very important to understand and know. This is kind of another example of a dark web report that clients get. I've obviously redacted some information here. This is actually from one of our clients. They had about 60 different compromises that we saw out there. But you'll see things obviously like the dates found, the email, if there was a password associated with that hit. We actually don't get the password. We just kind of get like the first, 4 or 5 letters, and you can easily see if that's your password or not that's out there. We find out, what the source is, the type, and obviously the origin if we're able to find that information too. So talking about layer defense and kind of talking about where to start with a company. Again, I'm talking very high level. We can kind of dive in a little bit more if we need to, but we think of your IT, think of all of your networking equipment and stuff as kind of like a building or a house, okay? So we got roofing contractors here. Let's talk a little bit about using this type of analogy. So where would I start and where would I start looking at things? And I'm going to get into a framework that you guys can follow here in a minute. But basically, you want to start at the endpoint layer. And what is that? That's like your antivirus. This is like malware protection for all of your devices that are accessing your data. There's basically like next-gen antivirus that we call endpoint or EDR detection that goes on all the different devices. It's in the form of software. It looks for malicious type of malware and that type of stuff, and has the ability to contain on those devices. Next layer would be like your networking. So that's like all of your network traffic and activity and monitoring. Next layer after that would be what's called the perimeter layer. This would be like your firewalls and other security tools to block any type of outside access into the organization. Next one is the application layer. So that's like your security policies, your applications that you use, your business line applications that you guys use, making sure that those are up to date, making sure that they're compliant with like HIPAA, PCI, SOC 2 compliances. The next layer is what's called the physical layer. Basically that's like your physical security measures. Do you have a server on site and it's just in a closet somewhere and it's right next to the front door? Well, that's an issue. We got to look at our physical security, making sure our data is under lock and key, and we're following the best practices for that. And the next one after that is the human layer. So one of the most vulnerable and most targeted by cyber criminals. And the reason why I'm using this house type of analogy is because you would never try to build a house by starting with the roof, right? We would start at the foundation, okay? I want you guys to start at the foundation, and that's the endpoint layer. It doesn't make a lot of sense to start with cybersecurity training when we don't have inventory of all the different type of technology that we have out there that could gain access into our organization. It doesn't make sense to start that cybersecurity program when we still have outdated operating systems and cracks in the foundation. We need to patch those cracks up first, and then we can move on to everything else. So last couple slides here, and then I'll be available for Q&A. This Nist, or what's called the National Institute of Standards of Technology, they have a cybersecurity framework. And you guys probably, this has been in the news a lot recently. This is what's known as the gold standard as far as a cybersecurity framework that you can apply to your business. This goes through everything. So if you guys are looking for like a roadmap or a list of like best practices, this is the one to follow. This is what our company follows. This is where all of our recommendations and solutions and software and tech that we provide to all of our clients. This is where we start, and this is what we use. So, not only do we make all those recommendations for our clients, this is what we use internally. This is an ongoing, evolving practice. The cybersecurity is a cat and mouse game. What we know today is not, there's going to be some other exploit down the road, tomorrow. This standard is ever evolving, and as things evolve and change, they're going to update that, and we continually review that with all of our clients. So it's broken down into 5 different factors, okay? You can Google this, you can find this online. If you guys want to, I'm more than happy to give you guys a PDF of this slide deck as well. But basically, it's all about building a process-driven approach. The first thing is we want to identify. So again, we want to see what's the tech that's out there. What are the different type of endpoints? We want to look at our software. We want to look at our surveillance systems, our door access controls. We want to look at all our different laptops and computers and servers and all that type of stuff. We can't protect what we don't know, what we don't have. So good documentation, identifying all of those potential access points is important. The next step is then to look at all of those and how do we protect them? Where can we apply two-factor authentication? Where can we deploy, endpoint detection, antivirus? Where can we restrict admin privileges for users? That type of stuff. That's what's in the protect model. There's a lot of lists and stuff that goes into this, and I'm not going to bore you with all of that today. There's a lot to this. I could spend another 3 hours just talking about the Nist framework. The next phase is detection. So things like dark web monitoring, that's detection, right? So we know, oh, hey, something's been compromised. There's detection. There's what's called SIMSOC, which can be put onto your network and identify if any type of activity outside is happening. Any type of malicious attempts are happening on your network. And then obviously we want to look at how we can respond. How quickly can we respond to this stuff? We don't want to be stuck in that 287 days or 78 days, whatever it is, in order to be able to respond to that breach. We want to be able to respond within days, if not hours, if not minutes, to these types of events. And so ultimately we can recover as fast as possible. And part of that recovery process is looking at how we can implement. If there's something that does happen, what are the new processes, things we can do to implement and continually improve our cybersecurity posture? So again, that's the security operations framework. That's from Nist. I would highly recommend that you go and take a look at that. If you guys have your own internal IT teams, or you're working with a provider, definitely bring this up and start talking through these areas. One of the things that we are doing here today, so everybody here today, if you guys are interested, free of charge, we are offering a free cyber assessment that follows the Nist cybersecurity framework. So if you guys would like to know where those gaps are today, we're more than happy to do that free of charge for you guys. We really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with organizations like this. So we think it's very important, and it's basically it's a questionnaire type of test, and basically it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to kind of go through something like this. So if you guys want to invest some time, we can do it virtually over like a video chat, or we can even come on site with you guys to talk through this. And out of that, we get a report, and you guys see what your overall risk assessment is and where you guys are most vulnerable, and then you guys have actionable steps that you can take as a company to obviously plug up those holes, if you will. The other thing that we're doing too, I did get a entity list from Heather, and I do have that information. If you guys would like that info, I have done some dark web scans on all the companies that are here today. So that is your information, so I don't want to freely just give that out to anybody. But if you are curious about what type of credentials that are out there, definitely let me know. I'll have my information on the screen, or approach me after the session here today, and I'll be happy to get you that information. And if you guys want to, we can set up a quick 15-minute call or video chat and just kind of go through it together. And we can talk about what those next steps are that we would recommend for you guys. So with that, I know I covered a lot. I think the time, what's the time here? We got 9:09. We got some time for some Q&A. Yeah, I'll take questions. So.
If I already have grit, do I get a credit?
I think, yeah, I mean, we love the partnership with you guys, so thank you. So, yeah.
So let's say we bring, for instance, Grid in, they come in, they start looking around your system, set this kind of stuff up. If you already had one of these hackers in your system, right? You said they land there for extended periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
Could they then be basically kicked out?
Yeah.
Without doing damage if they haven't done it yet?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the, so example, like on the network end, so if they're in your network and say we put in like a SIM SOC tool, so SIM is basically a hardware device that sits on the network. A lot of AI and automation into that. Basically, it looks for any type of weird network traffic. If malware was trying to be deployed, it would actually isolate that on the network end. It also looks for any type of open vulnerabilities, ports and things like that, or any type of malicious things, and we'll lock those type of individuals out. The other thing that it does too is there's a piece of it where it's actually there's actual humans a part of that. It's not our team. We partner with another organization. That data gets put to what's called a security operations center. So those are live humans that are if there's a notification from the SIM and it gets sent to the SOC. It could be a false positive, or it could be something, no, there's something going on, and we need to look and see what that exploit is and take care of it. So again, that goes back into the 5 factors of the Nist format, is that detection and response. So long-winded answer to your question, but yes, there is a way. Once we put those things in place, a lot of times we find 1 or 2 things going on, and we're able to isolate that and lock that down.
Now, if we're given access to another company,
Mm-hmm.
Grid, into our systems, or your partners,
Mm-hmm.
assuming you guys all carry insurance,
Yeah.
cover any internal
Yeah.
issues those companies may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're fully insured. To answer your question, the other thing too is what, and I didn't talk about that, and this is outside of the 3 main attacks that are going on, is what we're calling upstream attacks. So attackers are attacking well-known software that a lot of companies are using. So say like QuickBooks, for example, okay? They're exploiting those programs, and then they're sending out a downstream attack to where anybody who has, like say, QuickBooks on their computer, this hasn't happened yet, but I'm using this as an example. but anybody who has like that software program on their computers automatically have ransomware installed. So one of the concerns about taking on a partner is what are they doing to protect themselves and what types of tools are they using to protect their company. Obviously, being in construction, it's always about, sometimes just going with the lowest bidder, right? When it comes to IT, you definitely do not want to do that. I confidently stand here and tell you that we're definitely not the cheapest IT company around, nor do we want to be. The types of solutions and tools are really well vetted. We're actually part of a group of other managed service providers across the United States. We're part of a large peer group. It's over 1,000 different MSPs. And so we're talking about those best practices and procedures and things like that we need to do to obviously keep ourselves safe and our clients safe. On top of that, the solutions that we have, the software that we install on your machines for us to give visibility to do, help desk support and that type of stuff, those all could be exploited at some point, and they have actually before. However, we work with specific tools and companies that are actually combined together, believe it or not, because of these exploits, and become part of what's called the Cybersecurity Task Force. So that includes like our MMR tools, which is what we use to like install like our patching and stuff like that onto computers. That allows us to remote into those computers. That company is also partnered with the company that we use for all of our backups. That company is also partnered with the company that we use like our SIMSOC tools. And what they're doing, because they know that they're some of the best vendors out there, what they're doing is they created this group of companies that basically is using their tools and resources to try to hack each other and try to do these exploits. So if you're looking at deploying some of this stuff out there, or working with a partner and start taking these steps, it's really important to ask those questions of what are you doing, what types of tools are you using, and are the tools that you're using, are they a part of any type of larger organizations out there that are trying to protect each other. And the only way we do it is by helping each other. You can't be a standalone company in this business and think that you're going to survive or be secure. We need companies like them to partner together. So anyway.
Would you say multi-factor authentication, MFA, is really a fast approaching necessity for companies?
Yeah, and it's being required in all cyber insurance policies right now too. That's one of the
Our
top.
insurance policy won't cover us.
Unless you have MFA.
Invoke it into our.
Yeah, we just did a webinar on Tuesday with one of our partners that provides some of our tools, and they actually gave the latest report on what's happening in the cyber insurance world. So if you guys are currently in the process of either, if you have cyber insurance and you're renewing your policy and things like that, that whole world is turned upside down right now. The cost of a policy is greatly increased because of the rise and spike in all of these incidences, as you can imagine. Companies are no longer insured because they haven't put these things in place like two-factor and endpoint detection, dark web monitoring, cybersecurity training programs, things like that. They will no longer insure you, nor will they take you on as a client. So two-factor authentication is very important. However, that being said, there are many ways to get around it. So going back to that layered defense, that's one of the layers is like multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication on anywhere you can deploy it. But you need to have another layer behind that to back that up if in the event that that's also, if that layer fails, basically. So.
I think that the ultimate protection, you can use Dashlane,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to have one master password.
Mm-hmm.
So the ultimate protection is to never put that master password in your computer.
Right. Or
Keep it on a piece of paper in a vault somewhere.
just remember it. Don't put a Post-it note on your computer. I was on a flight recently and I looked over to the woman next to me and she had like 2 or 3 passwords taped to right on top of her laptop. It's like, well, that's. I'd love to talk to their IT director. So definitely want to do that.
Another one that I don't think you addressed, but is very common is like a lot of people go into Biggie or Tim Hortons or this hotel or whatever,
Mhm.
and they're using
Public Wi-Fi.
phones, their iPads,
Yep.
whatever, and they're connecting to the public Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And so anything that you're doing over that public Wi-Fi or what you think is the public Wi-Fi is being watched or
Yep.
And and they can grab whatever files that you are sending over, they
Yeah.
can, whatever you're looking at, they can see as well.
Yeah.
If they choose to.
Absolutely. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Just don't. If you are going to do it, use a VPN. Create your own virtual private network. So if you're using a VPN too, make sure you have a multi-factor authentication or 2FA built into that VPN as well. But you're absolutely right. And again, that's like the 8 or 10 different exploits that are out there. I only really want to cover the first like 3, the ones that we see time and time again in regards to businesses, but you're absolutely 100% correct. Another growing trend too is what's called attack hardware. So people come into an organization, they have like a USB stick, it looks just like a normal USB. They'll throw a bunch, some in the kitchen, some in a couple offices, whatever like that. Unknown to the users there, maybe they're looking to transfer some files, or they got to go print something, or they got to take a presentation somewhere. They'll just grab a USB stick off somebody's desk. That'll automatically directly inject ransomware right into the computer and into the network, completely bypassing all those fail safes that I was talking about earlier. Another piece of attack hardware that's out there is actually, believe it or not, the iPhone cable. So for $150, you can buy a iPhone cable that actually has the ability to hack your computer. So what's happening is these guys are dropping these iPhone cables like in airport terminals, public places of some type, where there's businessmen and women definitely walking around. Somebody will be able to plug that in. It charges your phone, works exactly like an iPhone cable, but there's no way to differentiate them between the original cable and that cable. But what it has the ability to do is that somebody can actually log into that device wirelessly because it's powered through the computer, and now they've got instant access to the machine. They can deploy different scripts. They can look and see what type of information is on that computer. The crazy thing about it is it has a built-in keylogger as well. So what happens is wirelessly, as they're typing away, so say they're logging into their Office 365 account, it's capturing all of those keystrokes, so you can get that password, that username, login, any type of stuff. And it actually has a built-in self-destruct feature too, where after they're done, they got the information that they need. They do a quick script, and it automatically kills that device, and the user just thinks that they broke the cable, and they throw it away. So it destroys the evidence. So.
I have a question. Why can't, like, the FBI or somebody track these people down and start nailing them, put them in jail, and stop this? Is it just they can't get to them, can't find them?
Yeah, it's a resource issue that's happening. The other thing is that the dark web is fully encrypted. Okay, these are guys setting up their own servers and things. So, like if you were to access like a known website, so say you access Facebook, right? It comes right up, boom. When I try to log in and I go into a dark website, it might take me a few minutes to actually log into that device because just the resources and stuff you need to host a website, and people accessing and things like that, and going through this whole tunnel, if you will, that's all encrypted. It takes some time to get through there. These guys are hosting their own sites. What's here today might be gone tomorrow, might be under a new name, and they're communicating through secret forums and things like that. One famous marketplace was called the Silk Road, where they sold everything from drugs to human trafficking to all sorts of illegal stuff, firearms, all that type of stuff. It was found out. The FBI was able to, through a long period of time, they ended up finding out, the owner and stuff like that of it. Again, all that information. Like if I was to go to a website today on Google, I could find out who owns that domain, where it's hosted, all that type of information. It's really hard to find that information in the dark web, unless you have a really strategic and tactful effort to try to take those websites down. The thing is that these guys, they kind of get found out, they get a little heat on them, and then they close shop, and then they'll go under a different name or whatever, and then they start the process over and over again. Again, there's big money to be made, and that's why they're motivated, and this type of stuff is happening. That type of stuff is not going to go away. If anything, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But there are a lot of efforts and things. The FBI has taken down criminals. They've actually physically arrested people, for this type of stuff. But again, what's also happening too is that we have a problem where these exploits and these things, they're getting really easy to do. with very little effort. So like the marketplaces, for example, obviously I would not do this because I'm very much against it, but I, with very little technical background, could go access the dark web. I could hire somebody to go hack a business for me. I could be a disgruntled employee who feels like I was terminated wrongfully, and I can go do damage without having any technical ability at all, just by accessing and asking for those services. You know, pay a couple $100, $1,000, and or work out an agreement to where, we deploy ransomware to this organization, and I take a certain percentage, and the attacker takes a certain percentage of that ransom. So that's the type of stuff that we're seeing too, as well. So it's really hard to track that down, and like I said, it's a cat and mouse game. And so obviously the cost to protect and run a business now is also increasing, which is unfortunate. We got enough to worry about with supply chain issues and gas prices and everything else. This is one more thing we got to deal with. But the good news is that there are tools and things in place now today that we can do to live a very happy life and know that our businesses are safe and secure and protected. So, cool.
Any other questions?
What was the other password keeper you couldn't remember?
We use LastPass.
That's it. Thank you very much. LastPass. Those are the top two.
LAST?
Yes.
So Dashlane and LastPass.
Dashlane and LastPass. Those are the top two. A couple years ago, I thought LastPass was like the best one. Dashlane did some cool things recently in updating their software that I thought was pretty cool. Our information technology officer for the company, he really feels that this is the best choice as of right now. That said, in a few years, there might be something better. But as of today, that would be our recommendation for companies. Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.